So I'd like to reconvene the, what day is it? October 15th council meeting from this afternoon. We have no public hearings. I believe Mr. Hacking would like to clarify some comments he made this morning. At the will of council, we can allow him. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Hacking, if you wish.
Robert Hacking, 7720 Prairie Valley Road, represent Summerland Dog Owners Association. This morning at the public comment period, in my looking at the 18.1 council presentation, I misinterpreted the diagram that was on the document, thinking that option 3 was smaller than the other options. This was an error on my part entirely. So I'd like to apologize for the characterization I made about that change and apologize to Lori Mullen for that mistake. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll now move on to our delegations. First we have up is Melissa Taylor regarding Living Memorial Park. Is Melissa here? Yeah, so just come up to the podium and push the button there. The red light should come on. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good evening to you, Mayor, Council, City staff, and fellow Summerlanders. Thank you for taking the time today to hear our request, which will address upgrades to the baseball field at Living Memorial Park. My name is Melissa Taylor, and I've been a full-time resident of Summerland since January 2022 and a part-time resident since October 2020. And I have Barry Hodson with me today, who is the president of Summerland Minor Baseball Association. Our family is a baseball family, and all 3 of my boys have played baseball with my husband as a coach since the painful and joyous years of T-ball, which starts at the age of 3. Our oldest no longer plays ball, but our 2 other boys played with Summerland Minor Ball Association for the past 3 seasons. We were very grateful to SMBA, Barry, for allowing our middle son, Hendrix, to play down a level due to a variety of medical conditions that he faced. It was a magical time to have my husband coach 2 of his boys on the same team. It was an especially high point this year when our very own Summerland Dodgers, a bit of a ragtag Bad News Bears team, rather unexpectedly won gold in the U15 division. Our SMBA team of parents has been amazing. The unique gift about sports are the friendships that form between the kids, but also between the parents and the families. As our team traveled around the Okanagan and to other smaller communities for games and tournaments, it was obvious that the quality of their baseball fields and facilities far surpassed those of Summerland. Our baseball fields are set in a gorgeous location with so much potential, but they are also in need of some serious upgrades and a larger vision to develop the park for both players and spectators to enhance their level of enjoyment and sport. In short, a park that will highlight the amazing community of Summerland and will serve the ever-growing number of kids playing baseball for years to come. We tragically lost our son, Hendrix, this past summer. He was 16 years old, and as you can imagine, we are walking a very difficult journey. Very early on after his passing, we felt convicted to take part in advocating for the redevelopment of the Living Memorial Park fields in his honor. We know he would have loved this, and it's a wonderful way for our family to keep his memory strong for all of us who knew and loved him. And for those that didn't, they will hear of him and his story too. Sorry, I practiced this without crying, but so today my request is quite simple. We're looking for your approval to partner with the Summerland Minor Baseball Association on a grant application titled the Blue Jays Field of Dreams program. We were recently in Nelson and saw what this grant did to improving their facilities. A letter of support is requested by October 28th in order to meet the October 31st deadline for this grant. 2, assuming the grant application is successful, we are seeking support to utilize these funds to upgrade the park as per the design that I believe is being put in your package and is up on the screen. Just noting that this was developed in 2023 in consultation with city staff, Summerland Minor Baseball Association, and a sports consultant called Ecora. And third, support to move to a stage 2 of an upgrade, which would be developed in partnership with SMBA, Ecora, and city staff. This would include, but not be limited to, enhanced seating, covered areas, a scoreboard, a concession, and additional field upgrades, including leveling and enhanced weed control. Fundraising efforts will be led by Summerland Minor Ball Association, including a private donation campaign and grant applications, which we may also seek your support for. In summary, baseball is a popular and growing sport in Summerland. Enrollment of kids under the age of 11 has blossomed in the last 2 years as we recover from the COVID era. Our family has been involved in baseball for the past 13 years, and we've learned that baseball is more than just a game. It provides a sense of belonging, teamwork, and a positive outlet for the endless energy of our youth. In smaller towns like Summerland, recreational activities are limited, and sports like baseball become ever more important. Baseball provides a social outlet and teaches valuable lessons about discipline, cooperation, perseverance, and contributes to the enhancement of mental health and time off screen, which is, I think, something we're all seeking for our kids. Improving our facilities is an investment in our community, our families, and our children, something I think we'd all like to get behind.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming up. Council, any questions? Councillor Peak.
Good evening, and thank you very much for your presentation.
Okay.
It's so valuable to have families that encourage this kind of investment in our community. I was wondering how you found out about the Field of Dreams application.
We were at a tournament in Nelson, and they had an just amazing facility. And I saw a sign up there just saying that they had received funding through the Blue Jays Association. And as it turned out, it was the weekend before our son passed. And so I had that idea just kind of put into my head, and it stayed with me very strongly.
That's fabulous. Thank you very much for coming forward with this idea.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor Sharon?
Yeah, thank you very much for coming forward with this. I think that you're so brave to do this, and I think it's a really nice way to honor your son. I really like the idea. So do we need like a letter of support or?
So I guess, well, in terms of partnering with the grant application and everything, I guess you'd work with Lori over there. Now, I guess what do we need in terms of a motion, corporate office?
Through the mayor, so you will need a motion, and I've just drafted something so anyone can jump in and just correct me. I haven't had time to go through it. So that the District of Summerland provide a letter of support for Melissa Taylor's and the Summerland Minor Baseball Association's grant application to the Blue Jays Field of Dreams grant opportunity for the redevelopment of Living Memorial Park as outlined in the district's Living Memorial Park plan.
Okay. We haven't got on the floor yet. Hang on. So, and in terms of the other stuff, in terms of working with us, do we need a direction on that, or is that just something you can do anyways through the rec department?
Yeah, through the mayor to council. I think as far as the second phases, Melissa and I have already been chatting about those opportunities. I haven't seen the full list of ideas, so I think we'll continue to have discussions about future phases, and then if we need to, we'll come back to council for direction if required.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pate?
May I put that motion forward?
Sure. Is there any chance we could get it on the screen so people at home can see it? And those of us here can see it? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Patton. And any further discussion? Councillor Trainer.
Melissa, do you know the timeline for this grant?
Yes, it needs to be submitted by October 31st.
Okay,
And I'm not sure how long it takes for them to facilitate the grant, but they do want the work to be completed. I believe it was like within 12 months.
Okay.
By the time that they do it. So we're only really asking for support for what's already being drawn up between city staff and Summerland Minor Ball Association at this point.
Okay.
And just kind of planting the seed that we would like to see it, you know, be redeveloped to a stage 2.
Mhm.
But we see that as, if you guys had money for it, that's great, but we would like just.
This is a first step. Yeah, great.
Big fundraising.
Okay, perfect.
And you'd be able to provide us wording that should be in the letter of support.
I can
Yeah.
do that, yeah.
That might help. Yeah.
Yeah.
Councillor Peak.
This is a question perhaps to Laurie. I believe there was a grandstand or seating in this park at one time, was there not?
A long time ago, yes, I understand there was.
It's a starting point for the discussion.
2015, it came down. I remember it well. Okay, does that work for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So if no further comments, I'll call the question. All in favor? And none opposed. That carries. Thank you very much. Next, we have the Garnet Valley Agritourism Association. So come on up, gentlemen.
My name is Steve Lorney, 4809 Monroe Avenue, Summerland, and representing the Garnet Valley Agritourism Association and a substantial number of other Summerlanders, I suspect. Along with me is Thomas Tumbach from Locomotive Organic Delivery.
Hi, thank you, Mayor and Council, for having us here. You're starting out, right, Steve?
Sure, you got to give your address.
Okay, sorry, 27218 Garnet Valley Road.
Thanks. So Mayor Holmes, council, staff, I'll start off by thanking all of you for the high level of support you've given to those of us trying to halt the Garnet Valley gravel pit. All Summerlanders should appreciate your efforts. Now, 5 minutes is a bit of a tight timeline on a problem as big as this, but we'll see if we can fit it in. Most of the reasons for opposing this pit are well known, but I will quickly run through them. Risk of injury or death to cyclists, horse riders, kids, pedestrians on this narrow country road. Dust, noise, other risks to the 6 closely adjacent homes. A serious reduction in property values, especially adjacent to the pit. Damage to the Garnet Valley Road that taxpayers will eventually have to pay for. Environmental risks to wildlife, Aeneas Creek. And then over the top of all this is sort of the general deterioration of our beautiful Garnet Valley as an up and coming agritourism and recreational destination. So after listing the above risks, you can see why we are encouraging council to keep up the pressure on the provincial government to cancel this permit. The Garnet Valley Agritourism Association is taking action on the following 3 fronts. Firstly, our lawyer that we've engaged will be submitting an application for judicial review because we have found a number of serious errors, omissions, and outright falsehoods in how the permit application was handled and issued by the ministry. By incompetence, laziness, or indifference, or a combination of all 3, this pit was approved in spite of the overwhelming opposition of the local community. And that includes council, Chamber of Commerce, and many others. So it must be stopped, and we all need to be on board to stop it. Secondly, we will be keeping up the political pressure once the election is over, as the two main candidates have both publicly stated their opposition to this gravel pit, with one of them stating a much higher degree of commitment to our cause. And thirdly, we will be letting council know we're open to any collaboration that council wishes to think about or discuss with us. And I guess to finish off, here's where we are going to put something out to consider. Garnet Valley Agritourism Association is proposing to council and the community at large that we review the official community plan as it pertains to the current Garnet Valley zoning. We do think that the current ag and forestry grazing zones do not recognize the tremendous recreational and agritourism potential of Garnet Valley. There are now 2 attractive wineries, organic vegetable farms, hiking, biking trails, equestrian facilities, and more. We are becoming a major draw for healthy outdoor family activities, but our zoning does put roadblocks in front of us. Once the planned Trail of the Okinawgans gets completed through Garnet Valley, and you can hike, bike, ride from Peachland to Penticton, there will be all sorts of agritourism and recreational opportunities. We need to be ready for that with a well thought out zoning category for Garnet Valley that will maintain the beauty and the charm of it. There's no big rush on this, obviously, but we hope you can see the value in what we are suggesting. And we're certainly ready to help. So Thomas and I would be pleased to take any questions from council on this.
Okay, thanks very much, Steve. Council, any questions? Councillor Pete.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Mayor. I know that there are other groups that are interested in what you're trying to achieve. Are you already collaborating with the Trail of the Okinawgans or the PIB or the Anglers Association or any of those?
We are working with the Trails of the Okanagan. Not a lot of connection with the PIB at this point. But there's also a fairly healthy equestrian community in Garnet Valley, and I don't think they're quite that well organized, but we're working on it.
That's good. I'm really pleased to see the kind of backing you have, and I'm so delighted that you had the meeting the other evening, that there was such a turnout from the public, and you got media coverage and all. So I'm very pleased that you're at what you're doing.
Thank you.
I'm sure you're aware that we're soon to be undertaking a pretty big OCP review, as we're mandated to by the province. And so the timing is actually very good to be looking at this. Anyone else? Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Your Worship. Steve, Thomas, thank you so much for your report. And I want to thank you for taking a stand with the district in regards to the gravel pit. I know that we've had numerous discussions around this table about what direction we need to take and do. And I'm very pleased to see that the Garnet Valley Agri-Tourism Association has taken a valued step in helping us achieve that to the end goal. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Good. Anyone else? Okay, well, we'll continue the good fight together. So.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks. On to development reports and business items, GICB application, and that will be for our Director of Community Services.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, Council. As a follow-up to council's resolution at the August 13th council meeting, that staff be directed to proceed with a medium retrofit grant application to the Green and Inclusive Community Buildings Grant Program of up to $3 million to retrofit the current aquatic facility. This report will present retrofit options and budgets for council's consideration. The grant application is due tomorrow at noon. We have the application all prepped and ready to go, but we require confirmation from council on the scope of work, the project budget, the District of Summerland contribution and funding source, and project timelines. Sustainable Projects Group was engaged to complete the energy audit report and to draft the GICB grant application and the GICB retrofit. Tabor Yastrzemski is here this evening to go through the grant program, retrofit options, energy impacts, and project timelines with you. The energy audit was required to explore options for upgrades to improve energy efficiency and is included in the council agenda package. The results of the audit revealed that the building is currently using 304% more energy than the average buildings of this type in Canada, which is significantly higher than the 86% more energy indicated in the 2018 condition assessment report. 8 energy conservation measures were identified, which would improve the building's energy performance by 29%. In parallel to this project, staff have been working on gathering information to build a proposed building maintenance plan for council's consideration during budget deliberations in December. Inspections were completed during our annual shutdown, and initial results and recommendations on the building's mechanical, HVAC, structural, electrical, and civil have been shared with SPG and have been considered in this grant application. Tabor will go through the 2 recommended options that SPG is proposing for the grant application. 2 additional options were considered but ruled out. One was to do a more expansive building renovation of the exterior envelope and insulation upgrades, as well as window replacements. But that option put the application into the large building upgrade category and will require a significant Summerland contribution of over $1 million. With envelope upgrades, it could also trigger building code updates. Another option was to apply for a smaller scope of work, but was ruled out as it doesn't address other identified future building improvement considerations. Because it is currently unknown if the Summerland Aquatic and Fitness Center could handle the additional load for more solar panels on the roof and the additional District of Summerland project contribution required of over $120,000, the staff recommendation is to apply for option 2 facility upgrades. Tabor will go through the pros and cons of each recommended option for council's final decision. It should also be noted that implementing the GICB grant upgrades may result in finding new building issues that require additional investment, similar to the roof project and discovering the moisture rot. It is possible that unrelated and unexpected building failures may occur in the coming years, which may result in the need to make a decision on additional financial investments. Tabor will outline the proposed project timelines for the grant application, which could put construction to late summer or early fall of 2026. And this grant information indicates that all project expenses must be incurred by March 31st, 2029. So there is flexibility should council want to adjust the program or the project schedule. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tabor, who is going to go through the slides and answer questions. And I'm just going to pass the remote over to you.
Perfect. You can hear me? Okay, so let's go to the next slide here. Sorry. So I'll give you guys a quick update of just what we saw in general with the pool itself. We were brought in to obviously look at from an energy perspective. Obviously, what's going on with the pool, we all know, very old building, a lot of things going on. So what we were basically trying to take a look at is with everything that was falling apart in the building, which will have to be replaced if you guys are looking to keep that building open. We're trying to find a way to tie in energy efficiency measures, GHG reductions, things like that in order to give us access to funding so we can keep the pool open, get a couple extra years out of it while also hitting emission reduction targets. Yeah, no problem. Get so excited, right? Everybody loves engineering stuff, right? Yeah. Yeah, I'll keep going. So high level for the program, similar to what we talked about last year, this is the Green and Inclusive Community Building Program from the federal government. In a nutshell, what they're looking to do is fund projects which are going to increase the inclusivity of the building itself, as well as get emission reductions. If we hit those particular targets, this district will have access to 80% funding from the federal government to support those projects. One of the reasons we made the recommendation underneath $3 million is because the way the program is being run right now, we know that the amount of funding that's available from the federal government is very, very different than last year. I think going with the same approach with the $25 million application this year would not be successful. We made the same recommendation across the country with our other clients as well. So the focus is a project under $3 million in order to allow for us to have sort of higher chance of success going after these projects. As Lori mentioned, application is due tomorrow, so everything is pretty much ready to go if everybody is interested and on board for the project. The evaluations, so it falls under what we call small to medium retrofits based on total emission reductions relative to the dollars requested from the application. What we did is, and I'll go through the individual projects in a few seconds, but basically we took a look at everything that came over the last couple of years as needed to be replaced by the building within the capital plan over the next period, the exact time frame, 5 to 10 years, I believe. We found different things we could do to those projects to give it a GHG reduction component to it in order to make it give it access to this particular program itself. So the goal we were after here was achieving 25% efficiency reductions, and we were actually able to get over that to about 30%. Okay, option one. So this is upgrades, including the boiler replacement, hydronic heating additives, so just a way to make the heat transfer go a little bit better. Adjustments to the pumps, the air handling unit, so getting air within the building, sensors in order to sort of optimize the way all of that is running. There's a retro commissioning project attached to it. There's some minor stuff like washers, dryers, low flow water fixtures in there. In this particular option, we've suggested rooftop solar being included, exhaust fans, dehumidifiers, ERVs, and other critical electrical and mechanical equipment, which does need to be upgraded. Our pitch within the application is that in order to put the higher efficiency equipment in place, we have to upgrade the base equipment, which is the stuff where we've got the problems right now. So one of the reasons in this particular case we're suggesting the rooftop, our organization focuses on energy efficiency. We do the consulting, the engineering, but we also do construction. We've been in many, many buildings like this, and there are large amounts of risk with the retrofits themselves. So all the planning you can do while the walls are all put together and all the equipment is running properly, the second we start taking pipes apart, we start ripping walls apart, things obviously go wrong. So we're trying to maximize the $3 million to get more flexibility when we go through to execute these particular projects, whether it's us or somebody else. The federal government is open to reducing the amount they give within their application. They are not open to increasing the amount. So if you identify problems, and the reason the application opened up again this year, there was a couple of projects that they started opening up walls. They couldn't continue with the project, so the money was given back to the federal government. Now they've gone back to the the country, and offered more funding. So that is option one. The total cost should be approximately $2.8 million. There's a very large amount of contingency in there. I believe 30%. Sorry, we'll get into the detailed budget in a second, but a lot of room for running into challenges with doing the retrofit itself. Summerland share of that would be $570,000. Enercan share would be $2.2 million. Leave it open for questions here? Yeah.
What's involved in finding out whether the roof can handle solar or not?
Yeah, so what'll happen with this particular project? So right now, application goes into the federal government. If it's approved, we can still say, no, thank you. We've changed our mind. No penalty to that. So we can always back away from it. But if it does get approved, the next step, we have budget in there for proper engineering. We've gone in and done an assessment to try to find what the opportunities are, but there's no engineered drawings and all that stuff in place. So if this gets approved, step one would be have mechanical, structural, and electrical engineer to come and have a look and do a proper dig into the roof and the other components.
Okay. So can you apply for this one and then if you find out later that the roof can't handle solar, can you go back and say, well, we don't need as much? Because, I mean, can you downsize your application?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the only way we can go. So if we go in, decide that, take a look at the roof or any of the other components, we go to move some pipes and all of a sudden we run into asbestos or all sorts of other problems, we will rejig what is going on with the application. We try to hit the same dollars given by the federal government to emissions reduced. That's really what they care about. But yeah, then we would restructure all of this to make sure it all fits based on all the problems that we run into.
Yeah. Councillor Barkle?
So from the Summerland taxpayers' point of view, the solar would cost $120,000. How long would it take to get that $120,000 back in savings from the solar contribution?
If we basically tried to max out what we could fit in the application for solar, you're getting 80% back off your solar. So you're probably looking at a 3 or 4 year payback based on what's produced if it's properly net metered and put back into the community. Because it'll produce more, many times it'll produce more than it could handle on site. Yeah. You can't really beat 80% incentives for a solar field right now.
Yeah.
Councillor Vanel?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarity, so let's say engineering says, no, you can't put solar on. Can we take those funds that were specifically for solar and say, oops, we ran into a problem over here?
Correct. Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Patton?
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Tabor. This is going to be actually a question for Lori. So when we had our roof issues, we had a structural engineer involved, did we not? Was his assessment only in the damage, or did he go a little bit further into actually the structural support of that roof?
Through the mayor to Councillor Patton, so strictly that responsibility was to look at the moisture rot and come up with a solution on repairs. It wasn't a full structural assessment of assessing weight on the roof.
Thank you so much.
Councillor Peak?
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Mayor. In your experience, do you have any feeling for how they weight the projects that go through?
Yeah, absolutely. So they'll take a look at the total emissions reduced relative to the dollars asked. That'll be one of the metrics. They'll also look at the size of the community or where it sits relative to other communities based on size. So if we're competing similar like for like project in Vancouver, they would obviously lean much more heavily on Summerland. They'll also take a look at innovation in the project itself and need for the project itself. So we've been pretty aggressive in the application and the sort of terminologies that we've used to highlight those things heavily. So,
Councillor Trainer?
Tabor, do you think that they would have any concern with the age of the building? Would they rather contribute to a building that's maybe newer, like this one is at the end of its life? Does that make a difference at all?
I don't think so. It's not in any of the documentation that they have based on the age or length of the project. They're really looking at community need, right? It's all about inclusivity is right in the name of the whole program. So we feel like we made a pretty strong case that there's a big need for it, regardless of age of the building.
Okay, let's move on to option 2.
Apologize. So this is the actual budget for option 1. So just a little more detail about what we discussed. Happy to go into detail, but I imagine you guys aren't overly interested in the exact price of a VFD or what a VFD is. If you have any questions on it, happy to answer those at any time. But ultimately, I think the biggest thing to highlight here, we did put a lot of contingency and a lot of flexibility on our approach with all of these projects. Like I mentioned, we've leveraged this program quite heavily in the past with very, very similar circumstances and needed the room to move the budget around. So, okay, option 2 is exactly the same as option 1. The only thing, we've just removed the solar. The reason we moved the solar is because the likelihood that we'd be able to put that full solar system on there is probably relatively low. This reduces the amount that we would need to commit to should the project move forward. So this is probably the biggest project that, the biggest component of the project that we don't actually need in place, potentially, assuming we don't run into any challenges. But other than that, it is exactly the same with the exception. So now Summerland share is looking at $450,000. I already mentioned there's about $120,000 difference. Any questions?
Thank you kindly. Well, if in fact the answer to having the solar in meant that we had more money and that that money could be used elsewhere in the project if it wasn't capable of being used on solar, then the only downside is the portion that the municipality has to put in as a contribution. Is that the reason we went to an option 2 recommendation? So I don't know who that goes to.
Through the mayor to Councillor Peak, that is correct. So just the unexpected potential costs with solar or having to do a structural upgrade, but with Tabor's explanation, sounds like we have the flexibility to move around. So essentially it's going to be the contribution, the size of the project and the contribution from Summerland's side.
Councillor Peak?
Thank you very kindly. So you talked about, you've used the wording, you've done all the things to make it sort of stand out in the ways that you can. Does solar add to that enhancement?
Yes, it would. The solar project, we priced it at, we tried to be as conservative as we could with projecting the production as well as the pricing, because it's a balance there between asking for too much and not having enough emission reductions. So we did a conservative reduction from the solar to line up with the savings that we get elsewhere in the building. That way, if we do run into a situation where we need to take it away from solar, we need to prove to the federal government that we're still going to get those emission reductions elsewhere. So yeah, we were basically very conservative on that component as well.
Would it behoove us to attach in any way the solar project to the fact that we have a solar farm and we have battery storage?
I'm not sure it would overly impact other than just indicating that the community of Summerland is actually very interested and committed. We're not just writing this on paper because we needed to replace a couple pumps and we want the government to pay for it. We are actually putting our money where our mouth is and installing solar elsewhere. So, yeah. And that's, yeah.
So what is the emission reductions for option 1 versus option 2? Do we have that, or is that coming up, or?
I don't have, I think we've got per project coming up. Let me take a look. I want to see if they put them on. No, they didn't. Apologize. So the total efficiency improvements. So there's a, I apologize. The emission reductions was approximately 30%. So that would hit, we can find those numbers. They should be in the actual energy audit report itself. You don't have, apologize.
Oh, is it?
Okay.
Okay, so I guess my point is, you know, what's, where do you get better efficiency from 1 or 2, or better reductions from 1 or 2?
If we add the solar, we would get better reductions.
So I'm a bit confused myself, just picking up on Councillor Peak, why we would go for 2 when it seems like we have absolutely nothing to lose and we have a better case to be made if we went for 1.
I think the only reason that came up was just trying to be very reasonable with the amount of money that's being requested. Obviously, the more flexibility we have with the project, the better. But we just wanted to consider, obviously, not asking for too much money to make the upgrades. I believe that's the only reason that came up. Is that fair?
And should council, I mean, I don't know, the application has to go in tomorrow, so I don't know if you've prepped it for an option 2 or option 1 application, but how big of a deal is if we go for 1 or the other to pivot by tomorrow?
A few minutes. We're just removing some paragraphs on solar.
Okay. All right. Councillor Peak.
Do we have any difficulty covering the greater amount as our share in a budget and a cost amount?
Through the mayor, Councillor Peak. So as far as the financial implications, as written in the report, we are proposing that the funding contribution come from the Growing Communities Fund. So it just impacts that availability of spending it on another project or elsewhere, but that's where we're suggesting that the district's portion comes from.
Councillor Pat.
Thank you, Worship. Tabor, in your professional opinion, what gives us the bigger success rate, option 1 or option 2?
If we include the solar portion, I think there would be a higher chance of success, but we tried to line everything up as much as we could to have it, both of them, sorry, professional opinion. We basically set them to be equal as much as we possibly could. Yeah.
Okay, Councillor Peak.
I would like to propose that we go with the option that includes the solar, because if we find out we can't use it, we can still use the money in some other portion of it.
Is another option though, if we find out, if we go for option one and we find we can't do the solar, is to give that portion back and stick, and de facto do option two?
Yes.
Yeah, so we do have options.
Would be either way.
Okay. Councillor Patton, yeah.
Thank you. So this would be adding new panels to our existing array that we have up there. Okay, thank you.
Okay, how do we want to go here? Oh, sure, carry on. I thought we got what we need.
It depends on the detail you want. I mean, basically, there's a list of the projects that need to be done, which heating, cooling, sensors within the building, solar PV, and then we've got a list of other efficiency projects which we identified. Don't need to go into the detail of those projects unless anybody's very interested. Timelines, sorry, so potential schedule. GICB applications, we should hear by mid next year. We went conservative on these numbers. As we know, last year took a lot longer than expected. Then we believe the retrofit project design will start so we can get into engineering by the end of next year. Then Q1 and 2, procurement, construction, that's really would be on the city to determine what those timelines are. And then 3, 4, we can deliver construction. As Lori mentioned, we can delay this if you don't want it to line up with elections. We would have several additional years if we wanted to push this back.
So for our last time we applied, I believe it took over a year for us to a year and a half. Do you know for the smaller amounts, they're processed quicker?
It is quicker. We need less people to review the application. We're hoping they've got most of the bugs worked out. The challenge we had, some of our applications that were successful, we went through 5 or 6 different government individuals running those projects. There was just too much turnover. I think over the last year, it's been a lot better than it was previously.
And then if there happens to be a federal election, that could throw a wrench into everything. So.
It can, yeah.
Okay, Councillor Chair.
So if we were to get the grant and we start doing this work, what is the potential for other things to come up? Like once we start getting into things, what would we do then? I guess, Lori, we would just come back to council and ask for more money, but there is a potential that once we start doing a project, given the age of this pool, that more things may come up.
There is, absolutely, right? It's a very old building. So the hope is that we put a little extra money in there for engineering so that we could do exploratory. So when we're going in, whoever's going in and actually doing the work, they can go fairly deep and try to find out as best they can what's going on. So there aren't surprises before we get into actual procurement and construction. I can't give you a percentage of probability of something going on, but it is a very old pool, it is a very old building. We will run into things, but that's why hopefully that contingency will cover it, assuming we don't run into structural issues or pool issues.
Quick follow-up. If we were to get this again, what's the length of lifespan that would add to this pool by spending this money?
I mean, the HVAC equipment will last a long period of time, but the actual pool itself, we didn't do an assessment on the outside, like the structure of the building. Yeah, I mean, we're going to add 5+ years to what's going on. The building itself is old, right? I mean, that's not why we were hired to assess, but from what we've seen in other reports, yeah, it'll add a little bit.
Okay, so we need a motion on the table. You're done, right? Okay.
Thank you, Zach.
Yeah, everyone's good with the timelines? Yeah, okay. Okay, so put a motion on the table and we can discuss it if somebody wants to.
Option one.
Okay,
We put option one on the board.
okay, do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Van Elfen? Okay, so discussion, Councillor Councillor Barco?
I wasn't really following why you wouldn't go with option two. It seems to me, I mean, other than the risk of maybe getting rejected is slightly more. If the additional 120,000 of our contribution is going to be paid back in such a short time, and it, contributes to all the efficiencies and stuff, it seems like the option. Oh, that's option one. I kept thinking it was option two, sorry.
Option one is with the solar.
Okay.
Option two is without.
So I had them backwards, sorry. Yeah, well, now things make sense.
All right. Councillor Peak?
Can I double check? It's because the mayor said, can we give the money back if we can't do the solar? I thought you said if we couldn't do the solar, we could still use the money.
You're still welcome to use them. The likelihood would be that we would reallocate the money within the project to cover other challenges. Another option is everything goes well, everything else goes to budget, but we can't put the solar on, then we can give the money back for the solar portion back to the government if that one component doesn't work.
Very good. I like the option of being able to use it because I do feel, as Councillor Trainer has said, and you yourself have identified, this is an older building. We could get a lot of complications. So it would be nice either way. Thank you.
Yeah, it's good to have options. And it's certainly good to get solar panels paid for by 80% paid for. Okay, any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor, option one, and none opposed. That carries. Okay, thank you very much, Tabor. Yeah. Moving on to the Peach Orchard Dog Park fence options, and Lori.
Thank you. Shifting gears to dog parks. This report is coming forward to council to provide the opportunity to review 3 fence line concepts for the permanent off-leash dog park at Peach Orchard Beach Park, and for staff to receive direction on which option or alternative option to include in the request to the province for approval. Option 1 represents the original concept direction provided by council, which is a 1-acre fenced dog park only. This option has the potential for a quicker review and approval in comparison to the other options, as it will likely not require further environmental assessment and approvals. The updated costing estimate for the black fencing and gates is $48,000, which does not include expenses for surveying, locates, grading, or contingency. A small budget increase may be required to the existing $50,000. If there is desire to do so, a request moving the dog beach could be issued to the province at some future date and would not encumber the existing project and timeline. Option 2 reflects a 1-acre dog park and phased-in dog beach to be forwarded to the province for approval of both areas. This option will require both a Section 11 approval under the Water Sustainability Act and a riparian areas approval from the ministry under the Riparian Areas Protection Regulation and the issuance of a watercourse development permit by the District of Summerland. This option will require council to budget for an environmental biologist to assist district staff on the required approval process, reporting requirements for both approvals. The estimated timeframe to complete these processes is roughly 1 year. Being a larger combined footprint, the estimated cost estimate for the black fencing and gates is $72,000 and does not include the expenses for QEP fees, surveying, locates, grading, or contingency. This option provides the opportunity to phase in implementation and budget allocation. For example, budget for relocating the dog beach could be included in a future year in the 5-year capital plan with approval from the province already in place. Option 3 is provided as per council's updated resolution. to explore the viability and costing of moving the current walking path to allow for a continuous off-leash dog park with beach access. This option, the request for approval from the province could be for the full dog park and dog beach simultaneously with a fence dividing the two areas and the pathway rerouted. Implementation could, however, be phased dependent on budget allocation. This option, as with option 2, will require the same process for Section 11 approvals under the Water Sustainability Act and a riparian areas approval, the issuance of a watercourse development permit, and hiring of an environmental biologist with an estimated timeframe of 1 year. The cost estimate for the black fencing and gates is $73,000 and does not include the soft costs. The cost estimate for a new pathway is an additional $55,000 plus soft costs, and an additional $5,000 would be required to include an accessible pathway from the parking lot to the main gate. As noted in the council report, key points raised from the Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee was that the Lakeshore pathway is important. They flagged that moving the pathway might be cost prohibitive. There was general support to move the dog beach. However, the space will become tighter than the current space and a more rocky beach, which may pose a potential injury to dogs, and they questioned the liability risk on that. And one comment came up that maybe Horse Beach could be dedicated dog beach as an alternative. After attending the July 23rd council meeting and observing the discussion and resolution, the Summerland Dog Owners Association issued a few notes to staff, which included the importance of irrigation being necessary during the summer on a small scale. Dog water access is very important. An auto shut-off spout closer to the dog park than the washroom building would be appreciated. Moving dog beach should consider the best interests of the dog owners, that the trade of waterfront access is equitable. Walking from the west entrance gate to the new beach is not ideal. Indicated the beach width and size should be equivalent to current, and the beach surface improvements is recommended. And they also noted that they did not recommend the removal of the east gate, which provides access to dog walkers on the pathway and the shortest route to dog beach. So with that, I turn it over to council to confirm the direction on the dog park fencing that should be surveyed and provided to the province for consideration for approval. And once that direction has been issued, staff will proceed with project next steps that are outlined in the council report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Barkwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just looking at, well, it could be any one of them, but I'm going to look at number 3. And the on each of the north boundary kind of cuts into maybe what, to protect that tree on the north side. Isn't now having that, if we were to go with option 3, having that dead end path there, I mean, that could be taken out, but, you know, I'd like to hear more about that. And then, you know, because it's kind of a wasted space between the parking lot, you know, because it doesn't, this picture doesn't show that the parking lot's right immediately north of the path there. And if you took out the path, you could shift everything north, or maybe not even shift everything north, but move the fence north. And, yeah, just make things a little bit more usable, then I think that would be a sort of an orphan little area to the north, because I'm all for, well, in each of the designs, it's if you leave the path in, I guess, so it's really for number 3, and which is my preference, and maybe we can't, you know, Rome wasn't built in a day. It's been a long time coming. But we could do, as you said, some parts of it, to, you know, put money in the budget and do what we can when it makes sense. But I think this should be our ultimate goal, and with the, you know, moving the fence north. See what council has to say.
Yeah, I was wondering about that. In all the designs, that north area kind of looks like sticking there by itself, and just wondering what the thinking was, why that was a little plot of land was just left out.
Thank you for the questions. And Greg, I don't know if you've got those available to put up on the screen if we want to reference them. So the one top right corner section was not included in the fence line. When we were down there actually surveying it and looking at, working with the engineering techs to map out the footprint, that area, and if anyone's been down there knows that it is quite marshy, and it was sopped, and that was in the summer. So it can get quite wet, more wet in the spring. And there was concern of just having that area torn up with dogs, but also, how to put the footings in with the fencing. And so it was deemed appropriate from our eng techs to avoid that area for both reasons, for the fencing as well as for the dogs in that area. I'd also just note in the top right corner outside of the pathway, so Councillor Barkwell and Greg, this is option 3, so it's the third slide or the third drawing. We could eliminate the pathway at the top and include that pathway area in this option as a combined dog park and dog beach. But the thought was having the pathway for people with wheelchair accessibility, mobility issues coming from the north parking lot into that gate at the top. And also that corner is a sensitive, eco-sensitive area, and where we've done habitat improvement. So we might want to avoid that area of putting the dog beach in that area.
CO, did you have something you want to say?
Thank you, Your Worship. I was just earlier going to tag on to the back end of Lori's comments and just lift out the fact that only option 1 is within the budget. And it's also likely the quickest and simplest option, which gets us to making this amenity permanent, which I think is with the overall intent of council. And also keeping the dog park design simple and not directly up against the high water mark should reduce the processing timelines. And of course, I think as was mentioned, we could always add that dog beach piece as a later effort, intent, and application.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Manelson?
Thank you. And just going back to your presentation and your comments, option 1 would take the least amount of, we wouldn't have to hire any consultants, so to speak, or QEPs or any of that. Am I correct? This one was quicker to approve?
Through the mayor to Councillor Van Elfen, the expectation is that is correct. We would have to do the surveying and map it out specifically, and then send that in to be reviewed to determine whether it requires an environmental assessment or not. So the expectation is it probably won't, given that it is farther away from the sensitive areas, but I can't guarantee that until the survey is done and it's been reviewed.
Thank you. Councillor Peak?
Thank you kindly, Mr. Mayor. I think that option 1, to do what we can afford to do and to do what we've spoken about in a very affirming fashion, is to put the fencing in on the 1 acre and have it done in the budget that we have set aside.
Okay, Councillor Patton?
Thank you, Worship. I like all 3, Lori, but I truly believe that option 1 is the one that we move forward with. And because, as you say, section 11 could be up to a year, which doesn't stop us if the wish of council was to explore that, which it was great for Councillor Barkwell to bring forward. I do agree with you up in that north corner, because even the guys, when they're using their ride-em tractor there, there's ruts by the trees because it's so soft. So I truly understand this, but I do think that it's well within budget. Well, it is in budget, and it is the fastest and simplest and most effective at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Trainer?
I'll bring, sorry, I'm having issues tonight. I will bring forward the staff recommendation in our report.
Which is?
Option 1. Yeah.
Do I have a second for that?
I think that this option, just like Councillor Patton said, achieves what we want to. And then as we progress along, we can always add in more features or whatever we need to do in the coming years and when we look at our budget. So I think option one is good.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I'll call the question. Yeah, Councillor Barco.
I didn't notice it had been seconded, so, yeah, okay. I guess I'll vote against this option because I still like number one and number three, and we can continue to operate as we are until we get everything lined up to do number three. But I'm comforted by the fact that it doesn't preclude future improvements, which, I feel that option three is the improvement we should be aiming for. And so it's inspired me to run for council again, so I can continue to agitate for this in the coming years until we see this done.
All right. Always good to be inspiring. Anyone else? Okay, I'll call the question. All in favor? And any opposed? Councillor Barco is opposed. Motion carries. Moving on to 18.3, the Eco Village, Director of Development Services, please.
Thank you, Worship. At the end of this month, the district plans to release a request for expression of interest to gauge developer interest in purchasing either the entire Eco Village development parcel or individual development sub-areas that's been identified in our recent rezoning for the project site, which is a comprehensive development zone. It is planned that the results of this expression of interest process will be brought back before council on December 17th, 2024. However, staff have identified two additional scopes of work that we are requesting council provide funding for, and that may help us with the sale process, as well as potentially de-risk the project from a developer's perspective. The first is a preliminary field reconnaissance report, which is a preliminary report done by an archaeologist that collaborates with Penticton Indian Band to assess the areas that are required for a deeper archaeological impact assessment and those areas that don't need to be looked at any further. So that's where that de-risking kind of idea comes from. District staff have had a recent meeting with Penticton Indian Band staff, natural resources staff, and they've strongly recommended that we move forward with this report because it allows us to gain more knowledge of the project before we go to a more intensive archaeological impact assessment study as to the areas that need to be targeted specifically for our archaeological review. As well, in terms of timing, it's a good time of year to be initiating this work before obviously the snow flies. And we do expect that if council was to give funding approval for this, we would be moving forward very quickly with an archaeologist to get a report done by hopefully the end of November. The second scope of work that we are also suggesting we move forward with is a detailed design for offsite improvements. As a typical requirement for a subdivision development process, we require the completion of offsite engineering designs to determine the scale of offsite improvements required for a project, as well as the cost for those offsite improvements. And then we normally take security up to 125% of those offsite improvements that are supposed to be constructed by the developer, and then we return that security once it has been constructed. So we're proposing that we go forward with that engineering design at this point in time and prior to the sale. This would include the roads, water and sewer and stormwater infrastructure that would be constructed as part of the project. And this will allow us to develop a Class B cost estimate for those offsite improvements. And whether that information is passed on to a developer and we take security from that developer through the sale process for them to complete the work, or as another option, depending on the level of interest we've gained on the sub areas, This would also give guidance to council on the cost benefit analysis of us going forward with that work and then selling individual parcels versus just selling the entire thing to one developer. But we need to do that engineering work first to understand the costs, if that makes sense. So I'm happy to take any questions on these two items. And also the timing, et cetera. I'll pass it on to council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Barkwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm happy to see this come forward. I will certainly support it. I feel vindicated and validated because I was arguing that the archaeological work should be done. Anything to de-risk the project would hopefully increase the value that we get. So this is I wasn't aware of the offsite improvement part, but that fits that bill. So I think, presumably we'll get all that money back and increase sales prices by de-risking it. So I'll be voting yes this time.
So the full archaeological assessment won't be done. We'll just know which properties on which it has to be done. Is that correct? Yeah. Okay. Councillor Peak.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Mayor. I think both of these projects are good ones to go through with. The preliminary archaeology takes some of the risk out of it for someone coming forward who might be interested in taking the property on as a development. It may make it more attractive to smaller builders to bid on certain portions of this, which was one of the things that was commented on from our commercial side on contractors. And certainly we need the design and that work done in advance so we know where we're at. So I think this is terrific. Thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else? Does somebody want to bring a motion forward? Councillor Van Alphen, second. Councillor Trainer, any further discussion? Call the question, all in favor? And none opposed, that carries. Moving on to business arising. Do we have anything to report from the committee of the whole? No. Notices of motion. Councillor Trainer.
I'm going to be bringing forward a motion next council meeting with regards to the number of commercial vehicles that are allowed to be parked on residential properties. A member of Summerland, our homeowner, she brought this forward to me because a neighbor parked several commercial vehicles on their property, and we don't have any way of enforcing that. Right now, our bylaw does talk about maximum weight, but not the number of vehicles. So that's what I'll be bringing forward, that we look to limit that. And I'll be bringing that forward in a couple of weeks. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll consider that next time. Councillor Barnwell.
I'll give a little background first. I've been made aware that the Summerland Sportsman Association, which operates the rifle range out there in Garnet Valley, has a lease with the government, and I don't know the term of it, but anyway, they had problems renewing their lease because they're a non-conforming use. That when that property was zoned forestry grazing, I think it's in the land reserve as well. The rifle club was already there, so it became a non-conforming use. But then each time they renew their lease, they have to confirm that it's a non-conforming use and that is okay, and that has been a hassle. And it also limits any development with you have a non-conforming use, you can't do improvements and such. So what I will be proposing is a motion that staff be directed to rezone that location as a site-specific zoning to allow archery and shooting sports there, and then it would become a permitted use, and a lot of these hassles would go away for now and in the future.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so we'll discuss both of those next meetings. Now we move on to councillor reports. Does anybody have anything to report? Councillor Peak.
I just wanted to highlight the fact that we were at the middle school this morning, and it was a great opportunity for their mock voting with the students. It was run very efficiently, and it was obviously the children had been briefed on how you do it. They felt pretty comfortable, And it was very efficiently done. So I want to congratulate the school and the fact that it's promoted through the province as well. They actually have ballots on hand and have voting booths. And it was a great opportunity. It's kind of makes you feel renewed. We're getting our younger citizens ready to vote in the future.
Makes you want to go and vote yourself. Okay, anyone else? Councillor Van Elfen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to say thank you very much to the Rotary Club of Summerland, the District of Summerland, the manager of the Sunday Market. It was an extremely successful year. Brought a lot of vibrancy to our downtown core on Sundays with the amount of vendors and the live music. It was a really successful year, and it was a lot of fun. And I hope to see it again next year. But thank you to the District of Summerland and the Rotary Club. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barkle.
First, I'm glad that Councillor Van Elfen enjoys getting up at 4:30 every Sunday morning for the market, and that's fun. I was thinking of mentioning this when Mr. Lorney was here. I just sort of wanted to take the opportunity, because I don't know if we can ever say it enough, that council is all behind the Garnet Valley Tourism Association and everything, 100%. You know, if we're not all sort of at every rally and stuff, it doesn't mean that we don't support them, and that we're doing everything we can, and lots of things you might not be aware of, but they're there, and our mayor and staff are working hard on it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, then we need a motion to adjourn. Councillor Van Elfen, second Councillor Peak, all in favor? None opposed, that carries. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Aaron.